What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and this past weekend I went to YCS Niagara, and even though I didn't do super well, I get people asking for the deck profile of what I played, and I think it's good. Maybe not so much as like a content creator on my perspective, because the videos themselves don't do as well as other videos, which is totally fine, but I think as a player it's important to like chronicle how you were playing a deck at certain formats and certain events, and now that I've been playing Altergeist for a while now, I've kind of gotten a pretty good grasp on how the deck works, and it's just cool to go back and look at how I thought this deck worked at older events. And I will say, in general, I didn't do like terrible. Like, I almost made day 2. I went 5-3, and I just made a really poor meta call, and it looks like that the person that did top with this deck also made the same meta call, so maybe I shouldn't feel so bad. But my first couple rounds I got really unlucky in terms of matchups and die rolls, and just in general I wasn't playing as well as I was playing at the 200th YCS. I mean, just like if you think back to like the 200th YCS video when I talked about what happened, I like mentioned that like I felt my list was really good, and I think looking back on it I can still say I agree. I think that like the 70 cards that I played were really good. I think I'd still play them if I could go back, and also I felt like my technical play was really good for that event as well. This event I felt neither of those things were true. I thought there were many changes that I could have made to this deck. I think I tried to get too fancy, and I think that the biggest problem besides the technical play thing, which I was not playing as good as I have been the last couple months here, especially with this deck in particular. But I think like the biggest thing that I messed up on is I didn't think that the new set would change the metagame that much, and I still figured like 50% of it would be Sky Strikers. I was very wrong, and the metagame's really diverse, which is cool, but it means that my secret villages in the main deck were really bad. Anyway, let's just get started with that deck profile. So we have 3 copies of Altergeist Marionettor, 3 copies of Multi-Faker, which gives you any card in your entire deck, 3 copies of Mulseek, really good, 2 copies of this guy. I mean, what do I say in every video? Like, I draw this guy too much. It's true. And I don't play Pot of Desire, so it's like I could play 1 if I really wanted to, but at the end of the day, you really have to play 2 of this guy. If you draw this guy with the Multi-Faker, it's really not even that bad. It's just when you draw 2 of them, it's really bad. And then 1 Concrete. If you're not playing this card by now, you really should be. This card was slept on for a long time when it came out in the TCG, but I think most people at this point know how powerful this card is, especially in combination with Secret Village. And so that's it for the Altergeist monsters. There's 12 of them, and then the other 3 monster cards are just 3 Ash Blossom, no other hand trap. I mean, Impermanence, I guess, is a hand trap as well. That's literally a hand trap, but Ash Blossom, I mean, it's the best middle ground for going into a format where you're not entirely sure what to expect. I find in a lot of matchups these days, this card just doesn't do enough, though. In the past, if we think about when this card wasn't very good, it's in matchups and formats where the best deck just has so many search effects where none of them are really minusing, that this card just isn't powerful enough. Like, this card isn't that great against Trickstars other than hitting the Reincarnation, but if you think of like against Sky Strikers, a lot of times like hitting 1 engage doesn't really matter because they can just have Ray or they can have Hornet and then they can add back the engage, so this card isn't as impactful. But I mean, it's just like the best middle ground, and also it's pretty much just like the best, because everyone's playing Pot of Desires, this card is like the best counter to that card. And then for my draw power, I sort of took inspiration from many of the Altergeist topping lists at the 200th YCS, and that was I played 3 Shared Ride. This card sort of underperformed. It's really bad going second, and so my first losses in the tournament that were pretty much my only losses, I mean, not really, but they were 2 of my 3 losses were to Pendulums, where I lost the die roll. So already like there's a bunch of dead cards in my deck because like these are really bad against a Pendulum board, the Secret Villages are bad against Pendulum board, and it's just like I think losing that matchup in particular, even though one of those guys actually ended up topping, it just felt really rough, just because like this card is really good against Sky Strikers going first or second, as is Secret Village, but I just got unlucky and didn't quite realize how much Canadians love Pendulum cards and stuff like that. It seems like all the good Pendulum players are from Canada. It's crazy. But anyway, yeah, I played 3 Shared Ride against the Sky Striker that I played against. It was really good. Against everything else, it was pretty bad. And then 2 Pot of Duality. I didn't just want to play 6 copies of these cards because they can kind of get clumpy. I think going back, I would play 3 Duality and 1 Shared Ride. Duality is just like so cool in this deck. It just fixes everything. It's really good. I like it. But I like Shared Ride because Shared Ride against Sky Strikers is kind of like a Droll and Lockbird that gives you a draw, because good players like won't keep searching against it. So then like you get a free draw and you Droll and Lockbird them. So it's pretty cool. And then for the bad meta call, we played 3 copies of Secret Village, and I didn't want to stop there. No, I went even further and played 2 copies of Metaverse. I don't think this is necessarily wrong if it's the right event for it. I just think that this was not the right event for it, or like the problem with going like this when you put all your eggs in one basket is that when you don't play against a deck, these cards really suck. But more importantly, if you do really bad in the first couple rounds of a tournament like I did, these cards become just like a liability because you're no longer playing against meta decks, you're playing against rogue decks. And luckily the Altergeist cards are really good against rogue decks because the Altergeist cards are extremely powerful. But these cards were just like dead in my hand, because even drawing like multiples of these against Skyscrapers is perfectly fine, and especially Metaverse because it triggers Multi-Faker. But like against like the other decks where these cards aren't as good, specifically when I played against like the Mirror Match and stuff like that, or when I went at second against Pendulums, these cards are just terrible. Like they literally do nothing, and that was like a big problem. So I think going forward, if I were to play these cards, I would probably just side deck them. Funny story, this Metaverse cost me $80 because the vendors at this Canadian event were just terrible. Like I don't know, they like didn't have very many cards, and the prices were pretty crazy, and like they weren't buying bulk. It was just one of the vendors told me they would buy holographic bulk, which I have a lot of, for the same price that they buy common bulk. And that just like, as like a US player, like that just blows my mind. Like in the US, like you can go to any vendor and pretty much sell your bulk hollows for at least 3 cents a card, and that was just crazy. But anyway, they didn't have like any of these cards, and so I had to buy an entire box of Circuit Break special editions, and that's what, like 30 packs, right? Or yeah, I think it's 30 packs, because it's 3 packs per thing. I think it's 10 per box. And I only pulled one of them, so that really sucked. But luckily, my friend Team Samurai came in clutch, and he had 1 copy. I made him sign it. Just that was like the lucky Metaverse, and I don't know, like. I don't know, I just wish I would have played against more Skystriker, because the match where I played against Skystriker, like, these cards and the Shared Ride were so good. Like, just ridiculous. Like, that was, like, 2-0 and just, like, super fast, and it was just because, like, these cards are so good against Skystrikers going first or second, but against everything else, they kind of suck. So, what are you going to do? And then 3 copies of Personal Spoofing, 3 copies of 3 Protocol, 3 copies of 3 Protocol, and then 1 copy of Manifestation. And the card that I didn't want to play, but I felt synergized way too well with Secret Village, was the Altergeist trap monster I brought back in. So this card is better than Manifestation when you have Secret Village if you have no other monsters, because what would happen is they would attack over your 1 monster, and then you would activate Manifestation, and then they would just Twin Twister, targeting like a back row, and then the Secret Village. You're just totally screwed. But in the case of this card, when they attack, you can just activate it, and then there's no time when there's not a spellcaster on board, which is cool. Also, this card's really good because what happened is, what kept happening to me at the 200th is that I would activate Protocol and then send a monster, and then they would Twin Twister the Protocol, and then you just like lose the monster and the Protocol. But in the case of this card, if you chain this, even if this is the other card they targeted with Twin Twister, when it gets summoned, it'll blow. If they targeted Twin Twister, it'll get blown up, and then the Protocol will be saved. If they targeted something else, you get to keep this guy and the Protocol, which is really good. That came up actually a couple times. So overall, I don't know if I play this card going forward. Probably not if I wasn't main decking Secret Villages, but I think it wasn't like the worst. Definitely was not the worst choice in my deck. It was a choice made from the incorrect meta call that I made, but I think in that case, it's still like I'm still glad that I played it given what I did with the rest of the deck. And then 3 copies of Impermanence, 3 copies of Strike. These cards got a lot better now that Trick Stars are kind of out of the metagame. Like they just weren't Trick Stars. Like people just don't. I think a lot of people forget that, like, even if a deck isn't terrible, people just get like bored playing the same deck like forever, and I think people are just really bored of Trick Stars. Some people have been playing them for like a year at this point, and they're just people just weren't playing the deck anymore. So that made these cards a lot better, because those cards aren't super great against Trick Stars because of they just get killed by a light stage. And then 1 copy of Order, which is obviously really strong. And Order is actually really good because Order, so with Secret Village and like Metaverse and stuff, it prevents your opponent from activating spell cards, where this actually just negates spell cards. So like if you, when you have Metaverse, you can't just like wait for your opponent to use a spell card. You have to just use it preemptively, which is, so it means that like you don't get value from like when they Twin Twisters, discard a card, and then you Order, and then it negates it, which is like crazy. Anyway, for the extra deck here, we have 3 copies of Hextia, obviously, 1 copy of Link Kribo, the Nightmare package, so we have Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus, Nightmare Unicorn, this card that I never make, this card that I never make, this card that I never make, this card, I mean, these 2 cards I never make. They're like, the problem is that whenever you have like enough resources to like make these cards, it's usually when you've like multi-fakered, and if you multi-faker in a turn, you can't actually use any of these cards. It's like every single time that you multi-faker, you just want to summon Hexia, and that's good because you can only summon Hexia. But even when you multi-faker on your opponent's turn and start your turn, you just want to make Hexia because it's so powerful. So these cards, like most like honestly, like all of these ones, you just don't make. You just make those ones. And then for the cherry targets, now I will say that I made one change when I went to the regional flight, and I'll mention that here. So I played Isolde, I played Dante. I did not play Electromite. If I would have played this, I may have done a lot better this tournament. If I would have had this against the Pendulum players, it probably would have gone way smoother and would have been fantastic, and we would have had a great time and tops the event. I don't know if it would have been that crazy, but I was playing the Thunder Dragon Colossus, which when I recorded Bowden's deck profile, and he mentioned that like Cherries isn't good against the deck because you can just send the Thunder Dragon Colossus back with the Thunder Dragon Fusion. I didn't realize that, so I was just playing that card because I was stupid. Definitely don't side that card with Cherries. Just play like Electromite or something, or even like Spiral Double Helix was something I considered. But yeah, I didn't actually ever side into Cherries because I didn't play against any of those decks. And by the time that I played against Thunder Dragons, I ended up just playing like different cards. Like D-Barrier is just good going first or second. I didn't quite realize that. And then cards like Book of Eclipse are good too, which I didn't play. For the side deck, we have 3 copies of Cherries, which I said I never sided into, but you have to play this card. And I think going forward, I would even play this card and also play a Firewall Dragon in the extra deck just for the FTK that's out there. Because while you can like Cherries the Isolde against like Jeff's version, you can't Cherries the Isolde against Max's version because they weren't even playing that card. So it's whatever. Anyway, 2 Inspector Border, and then a 3D Barrier. No one was really sure how good Firewall, or how good Firewall Dragon. No one was really sure how good Thunder Dragons would be, so I wasn't sure how many cards I should actually side for that matchup. But yeah, when I played against Thunder Dragons the one round, this card was really good. I just didn't have any monsters to go with it. But I can see like going forward, like yeah, when you resolve D-Barrier, you just like win. Like they just skip their turn basically, which is really good. But so I would still play that card. I would just hopefully draw in situations where it's better. And then 3 copies of Evenly Match. This card is just so good going second, like against everything. Like even against Sky Strikers, like if they play around this card, that means that like their board isn't very scary, so that's like fine. And even like, you know, there's like one time when I like evenly matched just for 1 card, and it was really good because like it meant that they had to get rid of their 1 backdoor card, which ended up being Impermanence, which would have like ruined my play. And that was just like even when you evenly match for 1 card, like it sucks that you're giving up your battle phase, but some hands you don't even need that, especially if you trigger Multifaker off this card. It's just way too good. Just in general, trap cards you can activate from your hand as quick effects are really powerful in Altergeist. And then 2 copies of Duster, which I should have mained, 1 copy of Wiretap, and 1 copy Judgment. Now that Trickstars aren't as popular, and I didn't think they'd be as popular, I finally added the Judgment instead of the second Wiretap. I think I'm just going to main this card now. This card, of all the cards in this entire deck list, I mean, I made some wrong choices, and I made some tactical misplays during the tournament, but of all the cards in this entire deck that were, like, newly added to the deck, Solemn Judgment way overperformed to the point where I definitely want to main deck that card, just because it's kind of like Dark Bribe in the same way. Like the reason that the guy that played Frogs played Dark Bribe instead of Wiretap was because Dark Bribe can hit like everything, not just evenly match and red reboot. And that's the same for Solemn Judgment. Like I Solemn Judgment like tons of stuff, like Twin Twisters got hit a couple times, like a Magical Midbreaker Field, just all sorts of things that you can hit with Judgment, like Monster Reborn, Soul Charge, all that stuff. Really powerful card that honestly every time I drew this card it came in so clutch. It was really good. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoy this deck profile. Like I said, I don't really do these so much because I think that they're going to get views, because they're probably not, but one thing that I find interesting not only is that they're helpful for myself for sort of having, when you're forced, whenever I go to a tournament, I know that I'm going to have to explain all my card choices, so I find myself when I'm deck building, I play less bad cards, or at least I try to play cards that I know that I will have a reason for. Like I wouldn't just like throw this card in my deck because I know that like when I do the deck profile, I'm gonna have to explain why I'm playing this card, like why or what situations this card comes up in. So I felt that like when I do this, it's helpful. But also, even though these videos don't get as many views as the other like videos on my channel, I find that when I go to competitive tournaments, people come up to me, and one of the things that they say is that these videos are helpful, and they mention that because they know that I always mention that they don't get a lot of views, but they say that they're less helpful. So even if these videos aren't super beneficial to every watcher on my channel, if they are beneficial to the competitive players, I think that's really cool. So I'll continue doing them, obviously. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.